Hello. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for coming and attending this lovely event with us. And I would like to again extend a heartfelt welcome to you on this morning for attending this community roundtable. As you know, just to pull us all up to speed, this is in light of what happened on our campus last semester and the unfortunate events that took place. And we committed that not only will we do something administratively to take proactive steps to preventing and or responding to adequately any type of hate speech or something like that that takes place on the campus, but that we would also open it up. And we wanted to have a conversation with our community members to say, you know what, we don't know everything. And it's rare for administrators to admit that, right, and institutions, but we don't know everything. And we need to talk to you and ask you your opinion on some programming that could take place here at the institution that would strengthen our diversity, strengthen the safety and inclusion of the community, and that's why we're here. Let me set the ground rules for today and explain what we're going to do. Right after I finish speaking and bringing you welcome, we're going to bring up Vice President Boyd Yarbrough, and he's going to give an overview of the Viking Creed and give you his comments and thoughts about that. Followed by that, I'll come back up to the microphone and talk about BERT, what we have done, our Bias Incident Report Response team. And so we're going to go through these systems, and again, you see it expresses the activity and procedures policy against harassment. We're going to talk about what the institution has done as far as policies and procedures that are put in place. We've already established them. It was based upon the panel discussion, and in part, some of them were taking place before the panel discussion. So those are already structured and put in place. The point of this meeting is not to really drill down into those. If you have any questions that, some questions that you may have as a result of reviewing them, we'll respond to that. But the majority of the time today, we want to spend listening to your ideas and thoughts about what we can do to move forward within the framework of the policies and procedures that we have established, right? And so we want us to think outside the box. Who can we partner with nationally, locally, to strengthen our community, to make sure all of our students feel safe and secure? So I want to situate your minds around that. You have your creative ability today, and we want you to share all of your thoughts and bring your expertise to bear with us today, okay? And so also, secondly, I want us to respect everybody in the room. I want us to respect every thought, every idea, right? I want us to show that with our behavior, with our nonverbals, if you don't mind. If someone brings up something that you don't agree with, that's okay. This is a thought process. We're thinking through ideas. Let's just support everyone who brings an idea and has the courage to speak up. I want to establish those ground rules, okay? So we respect everybody. Every idea is valued and validated, and we're going to take it into careful consideration. Then after we go through this process of listening and gathering notes and information, then I will come back up to the microphone and follow up. Are there any questions about how this forum is going to take place? Okay. With that being said, I'm going to bring up Dr. Yarbrough, and make sure when we speak or have questions or comments, speak into the microphone because it is being recorded. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Sinnett. Again, my name is Boyd Yarbrough. I have the pleasure of serving as Vice President of Student Affairs and know many of you, so it's nice to see you here. I appreciate that. Some of you I don't know, and I welcome you to the conversation. Just as a reminder, this is part of an ongoing series of conversations, so this is the second, I believe, that we have had, and we have some others scheduled still. As Dr. Sinnett mentioned, this one is being recorded for those who cannot attend, so we'll be able to share that with other people as well. I'm going to talk for a little bit about the Viking Creed, and I'm excited to do that. We're going to keep these parts of the conversations relatively brief because, as you've heard, the most important part is hearing from you, engaging in conversation, hearing your thoughts and ideas and suggestions about what we as a university community can do better. So I just want to acknowledge that in the audience, as I scan people, I'm seeing students, faculty, staff, administrators. And that's exciting because it's going to take all of us to really change the conversation and change the culture on our campus. So I'm excited by that. The Viking Creed, so you have big copies on your tables, most tables. You have smaller copies, and then you have, I pledge to live the Viking Creed. So let me tell you a little bit about this. I've been at Cleveland State for 4 years now, a little over 4 years. When I first got here, we went through orientation and read the Viking Creed as part of the Magnus Fest. So I thought that was a really cool tradition. It was really neat. The creed comes up on the screen, and I'm looking at it, and it looks like a dissertation. I mean, it's long, it's multiple paragraphs. It's confusing to me, and I think I'm relatively able to navigate a written paragraph, and I didn't really understand what it said, what it was emphasizing. And so I convened a group of people to revisit this, and I'm excited that what you see is a result of that work. Now, in higher education, we generally do things by committee, so that's exactly what we did. I convened a group of faculty, students, and staff to look at this, and as you might expect in higher education, that can result in something that's even more unwieldy, but it did not. So it's the magic of having the right people at the table and keep iterating what's important. Let's drill it down into bullet points, and what you see here is the end result of this. So some of you in the audience participated in that process, and I want to thank you for joining us in that journey. I am really proud of the outcome that was initiated by Jamie Johnston, who's no longer with the university, and brought to culmination by Catherine Teasling, who's still here. She's actually working an event downstairs as we speak. So I really appreciate the leadership of the team, but it took a community to get to this point. We launched this creed just this fall. Had a big video event that we had. We had an event downstairs in the atrium, and we invited students and faculty and community members and staff to sign and commit to the creed. And as you read through this, it is our hope as the group that worked on this, that this will be infused in all the work that we do. Every classroom, every student organization, every interaction that happens on campus, positive and negative. And I believe that if we use this as a framework, nothing but positive will come out of that. So I thank you for the opportunity. I'm not going to read the creed for you. You have that in front of you, but invite you to join us in making a commitment to the Viking Creed. Dr. Stinnett. Yeah.
Follow the rule. Let's speak into the mic so that it can be recorded anytime we go around. But now I want to have a conversation with you about BERT. How many were able to read about BERT, Bias Incident Response Team? How many people were able to read that online? Okay, most of you. If not, we do have copies of it in the back if you want that on the table. But the Bias Incident Response Team, again, last semester, we didn't have a process in place to respond to this situation. And that's the area of opportunity to the growth for the university, right? And so sitting around the table as we've been going through this, he is now interim vice president, Rob Spademan. Rob Spademan brought up this idea, this acronym he gave us, this, talking about maybe we should think about that. That's the first time I heard about it. Now, somebody else may have done that, but I always like to give credit in a college setting, no plagiarism, give credit to the author. But anyway, someone brought it up, and I thought it was a fantastic idea. We were around the table, the leadership, and we decided to do this. And so my colleagues are just amazing. And this was to make sure that, again, we had a proper system in place to respond to any bias incident that took place on the campus, that it ran through this system and that we could filter it, and to ensure that we were crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's, and as an institution that we were responding most appropriately. Because as we discovered in the last one, it was less than ideal how we responded to that initially, right? And we just humbly admit that. And so to that end, this team is comprised of volunteer leadership across the institution, representatives from departments such as student affairs, police, marketing, human resource, general counsel, the Office of Institutional Equity, my office, the Division of Diversity, marketing, and the counseling center. Okay, we have a representative from each one of those departments on this team. And so when a report is submitted, it goes to these point people and we review it to discuss what is the process now to get the ball rolling. Where should this go? Where should this land? How should we respond to this? We have to make sure our campus and our students feel safe immediately. What is the mode of communication to get that out? How are we going to address this ongoing? This team gathers themselves no matter where we're at, and we begin to put the process, the thinking process behind how we're going to respond to this, okay? And so you can submit these online. I think if you check out our website, on my website, the Division of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement in particular, it's situated there. It's also, is it also on your web page as well? Okay. Perfect. So it's also on the procedures and guides page. And I think student affairs, exactly, it's on student affairs. And so it's all over the place, okay? You can do this electronically. You can make a phone call to the police department. We are connected, and they're going to set this process in motion so that we can adequately respond to what's going on. Okay, so that was critically important for us to really establish a protocol and a policy and procedure so that we could be on the same page as an institution to ensuring that all of our students feel safe and welcomed at this campus. And so are there any questions about BERT? Now, let me say this. It does not replace the role of individuals reporting incidents. You can, let me say it this way. If you're confused about whether or not you should report this through BERT, report it to BERT, okay? Because what we said is we will decipher and point it and push it in the right direction and connect it to the right folks. Every incident may not be a BERT response team incident. It may be the Office of Institutional Equity that takes it on and spearheads that, but if you can't think of anywhere else to go to BERT, right? And we will funnel it to the right folks. That's what I've been telling everybody. Just so we have a centralized location and we don't want to make this overly complicated, all right? Any questions about BERT? Excellent. So we'll move forward, and I think we're going to have, okay, perfect. Rachel Lutner from the Office of Institutional Equity come up.
So that was really convenient because Maurice was talking about the Office for Institutional Equity. So we have a policy at this university against discrimination, harassment, sexual violence, and retaliation. Our policy takes the broadest possible view of the types of issues that fall within it. So we prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, sex, gender expression, gender identity, disability, national origin, genetic information, and anything else that is protected under state or federal law. So we look at it as broadly as possible to, in order to keep this campus as comfortable and respectful for everyone as possible. OIE, we conduct investigations. People can report incidents that they believe are discriminatory or harassing to OIE. We do a lot of informal problem solving. You never have to make a formal complaint for OIE to assist you. We do a lot of training, so if you ever think that there's that somebody or some area could use some training, we're always happy to do that. And you're always welcome to bring a support person if you come to OIE, and we'll do everything we can to help you. And just like Maurice with BERT, if it's not an OIE issue and you come to us, we will make sure that you know exactly where you should be going. Okay? And now, Rachel King.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to the very mundane, which is the expressive activity procedures. So a couple of years ago, the board passed an expressive activity policy, which essentially made the statement that we want to respect free speech, but also keep our campus safe and allowed to do the functions that it is, which is to teach people. So this year, we adopted some procedures that go along with this. Would characterize these as kind of time, place, and manner restrictions. They talk about how big your signs can be, don't park on the sidewalk, how loud you can yell in your bullhorn. And then the last piece is about bulletin boards. And there's probably a lot of interest in this piece. This section of bulletin boards is also copied into our facilities use policies that apply to conference services. So the basic issue with bulletin boards is the university takes the position that every bulletin board on campus is owned by a department or by conference services. So only things that are, the goal is that only things that are approved by that department will go on the bulletin board. So these are not judgments based on content, except to the extent that each department should only post things that are relevant to their department. So we have a couple of ways of safeguarding against things that you may not want to see. People have to now deliver their postings in person. So someone has to come in and say, please post this on your bulletin board. They have to have contact information on that posting. So if someone comes in with a disturbing message and their contact information on it, they may be counseled that that's not a safe thing for them to be doing. And then for the most part, departments should have rules that say they are relevant to a university event or one for which people have booked university space.
Okay, first you submit it to, who do you submit to a department?
So if it is about a conference service event, an event that's going to be in one of our facilities, you can give it to conference services and they will distribute it among the 30 plus boards that they have. If it is, for example, a music department related thing, then the goal is to ask each department to have a system where maybe it's the administrative secretary takes them and puts them on the board, or stamps them and allows people to put them on the board. These rules, the departments own the bulletin board, so they need to adopt these rules in order for them to apply, but these are the rules that we're recommending each department adopt.
So if I see a sign and it's not stamped, it shouldn't be on that board.
Yes. Either the departments will stamp them, or the departments will have some other way of knowing what's approved and what isn't approved.
And you have people that police up.
Yes, I know for the conference services boards that if facilities sees something that isn't stamped, right, that they will take it down.
And if I may add, conference services is patrolling those areas almost on a daily basis, and as they see things that are not approved, they're taking those down as well. Also, just as a point of information to make it simpler for you, you can contact conference services downstairs at the information desk, the first floor of the atrium, and that can get the whole thing started for those 30 plus bulletin boards across campus.
As I'm reading the expressive activity procedures right now, to my understanding, this also applies to any outside, not university affiliated groups.
Yes, the procedures do, yes.
Okay.
And the point where the bulletin boards converge is that these procedures make the point that only CSU things are on CSU bulletin boards, and also it addresses magazine racks, that outside entities are not supposed to leave magazine racks on campus.
Okay. My question is in regards to the outdoor areas and in terms of the policy, when it was put in place, why was it decided? I'm curious why it was decided in effect to outside groups that aren't affiliated to the university, and what they can and can't do, because that was a problem right after the flyer went up. And if this is something you want to put off, that's fine, but...
So in general, we are a public entity and members of the public can use our outdoor space. The policy we actually adopted was one that was developed, or at least blessed, by the Ohio Attorney General for all public universities in the state. And, you know, I think others can speak to this, but in general, we respect free speech and people's rights to express themselves. And so the purpose of these procedures is to put some restrictions or limitations around that, so that the business of the university can still continue and everyone is sort of treated in the same way.
And if these groups do cause unsafe environments, even if they don't directly threaten anyone or have weapons, what procedures are there in regards to that? If they're, for example, saying bigoted things and making students feel unsafe, what's in place for that? Like if they don't have weapons and they're not being too loud, for example.
So if it's just their message, I think they are permitted within these restrictions to express themselves, even if their message is unwelcome. In general, if they are threatening, if they are causing so much harassment that there's a hostile environment that rises to the level of impacting our discrimination policy, then those are things that will be addressed under those policies. But in general, people can come, people can say things that are offensive and unwelcome, as long as they don't do it over 80 decibels.
Are any of the people who are coming on regularly screened? And that's my last question for this.
Not on a regular basis. I mean, you will see that the procedures request that if your group is going to be 100 people or more, that you give us notice so that the police can do an analysis and see what kind of security they might need. But no, there is no requirement in general that people be screened before they come.
And if I may speak to that just a little bit, no group is screened on content. If we have awareness that groups have been problematic on campuses that have, in ways that have resulted in violence or disruption to the campus, then that information is channeled through our police, and they discern what kind of security might be necessary. So they're great partners of that. And then I also wanted to give a very tangible example, and I don't think we have anybody from the police here today, but the police are wonderful at responding and supporting students and outside groups' right to protest. So typically that happens on the outside of the Student Center courtyard on this side of the building. And sometimes there are protest and counter-protest. And all of that is welcome and is permitted by our policies. And the police and the Division of Student Affairs, I think, do a remarkable job of providing people space to say what they want to say, as long as people are respectful and safe. So for instance, last spring we had 4 different protests or counter-protests happening at the same time, and all of that was energetic and offensive to some until somebody got pushed. And then the police and I intervened and dealt with that, and then the rest of the groups were allowed to stay and say and do what they wanted to do, right? So it's about keeping people safe. Cameron, if you get that.
I was wondering if, I know there were some issues in the beginning of the year about chalk painting, kind of around campus. Is that addressed in this at all?
I don't think it is. Shahada is our chalking expert.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, so I don't know that everyone heard that, but chalking is not permitted on campus is the simple.
So what it says is nothing may be attached to or drawn on, parens, including with chalk or other temporary material, any sidewalk, street, or building.
I have 2 questions. My first question is there, I'm not familiar with the campus, is there like areas that are designated around here that are not campus mixed in with campus locations, or is it generally all in one area?
So we have public streets and sidewalks that run through our campus. So those are not ours. I mean, those belong to the city of Cleveland. And then I think we're mostly contiguous. I'm looking for someone with more, does anybody else know? I don't know. Do you know, Shahada?
Within the campus, we are EHO property. Clearly, sidewalks are moved, Jackson, and Fourth Street, almost shortly. Those sidewalks belong to the city of Cleveland.
And specifically where the campus is interspersed with the city, like the Mid-Out building, these policies pertain to that space, but not the space the university doesn't control. That's a simple way to think about it. So if it's university property, these policies apply.
And my other question was, so is there so like for faculty, staff, and students, is there a like non-discrimination policy of that like the students and the faculty have to abide by as far as like in the classrooms? So what makes that different than like this issue?
So the short answer is our anti-discrimination policies apply everywhere. And it is one of the things that OIE judges is, is there, if someone complains, and they do routinely, about conduct in the classroom, is there some academic basis for what happened or is there not? And that's part of the judgment that OIE makes, is they look at any complaint of discrimination.
So one of the things that angered me about the flyers earlier is because I didn't think it was speech, because there was no speaker, because they were, they didn't identify themselves. So I was really glad to hear you say that you've got contact information requirements now. Have you thought about contract rules? So if somebody puts a phone number up there and you call them for a week and they don't answer it, is there something that says there has to be contact within some period of time, otherwise the contact information is not really contact information?
Well, so it says postings must identify the host/sponsor and include contact information. I think if you call and find out it's not a real phone number or not a real email, then they didn't include their contact information.
Well, it could be a real one, but it's
But
just
nobody ever
they
calls
don't
you
pick it
back?
up for a week or something like that. You know, I mean, that's just one example. So contact information is part of it, but rules about contact information is another one.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as it's legitimate, as long as it is their phone number and their email, then it meets this standard. But if they're putting up something, I mean, there shouldn't be, with these precautions in place, there really shouldn't be an opportunity for people to put up things that were not, things similar to the flyer.
I like what, and I think that's transitioning into the suggestions, and I think that's a good one, right? I think that, Bill, that's a fantastic, we want to mark that down as something to consider, really strengthening what does that mean for the contact information, and can we contact you? Because I can put up my name and my email. I think I'm gathering what you're saying. We can put up our name and our email, and then I kind of hide behind the fact that I avoid you from having to be, and that's kind of what we're talking about, I think. So I think we can look at that as a recommendation, and so that's a natural transition into where we're going to go, and thank you for sharing that. Thanks everybody, thanks to everyone who shared at this time.
All right, I think we have one more.
One more, okay, perfect, yes.
I had a question for Ms. King here. My question is, in the past, for example, anti-abortion protesters came on campus. They were wearing cameras and recording students as they passed by, recording students who stopped and talked to them. A Christian preacher put up a camera and was recording his sermon and the responses to it. I don't see it in the policy, so I would like to know what is the policy surrounding cameras and recording students on campus when engaging in these activities.
I mean, you said it yourself, it is not addressed in the policy. I don't know that it's realistic to, I don't think we could ban cameras. I mean, everyone has a phone. So it is, I mean, the answer is there isn't a policy on that.
I think, again, that is a wonderful, that's
But
again,
but I
it's a
will say
suggestion.
this, to the extent that it creates a hostile environment and it constitutes harassment, then it violates our discrimination policies. If it doesn't, then it's permitted.
Rachel, did you want to add anything? I saw you.
Yeah, so if what they were doing was possibly harassing maybe somebody who didn't agree with like their view of maybe abortion is a sin or something, then it might be something that we could look at through the policy against discrimination, harassment, and sexual violence, especially if it was making students or our employees, or guests feel uncomfortable.
Because we don't know what they're doing with this footage after they leave. That's my main concern. We don't know what they're doing with it. Are you disseminating it? Could disseminating it put a student at risk?
That's a great, listen, I think that falls under the category that we need to put that down, because that's something we need to wrestle with. We haven't thought about that. And so I think when Bill and Aisha come up and start facilitating, if we could write those two down, number one, contact information, what does that really mean, what's that look like, and how do we follow up to ensure that we can get a hold of the people. Number two is when someone comes on our campus and is recording, especially from outside, how does that make our students potentially vulnerable to something? I think that we need to explore that. That's a great idea. I see a hand right here.
I don't know if this is true or not, but from what I heard that when people record you, isn't that like your personal, you can say, I don't consent to be recorded, or are they still allowed to record you after you say it?
So in Ohio, we're a one-party recording. We're a one-party recording state, which means that if one person, and that's usually the person who's doing the recording, if they consent to it, which they are by the fact that they're doing the recording, then it's legal. Some states are different, and they require like the people being recorded to consent, but not here.
Okay, good to know. I didn't know, but.
Fantastic, yeah. So any other questions regarding what we're talking about right now? Okay, that's fantastic. Perfect segue. So if I could have the two facilitators come up so I can introduce you. And we have Dr. Bill Bowen, who is the president of the Faculty Senate. And then we have the SGA president, Aisha, who's coming up. And they're going to facilitate these conversations at your tables. opening this up. Again, just as you've already heard, ideas on how to strengthen and further improve our processes, our policies, but most importantly, programs that we can bring or partnerships that we can develop with institutions, organizations around to make our campus more safe and inclusive. So I'll pass it to you two, and then you can facilitate how you want to set this up.
So we have 2 ideas so far, right? Are you going to get those 2 written down? So the objective is to come up with ideas and brainstorm and find ways that we can make our responses or potential responses to these statements better. I think we're all in agreement that last time there were some issues. Yes?
I like your idea about the contact information. I like the idea about addressing contact information, possibly requiring actual contact to make sure that it's legitimate and can actually reach the person. And maybe also in the information requiring a student ID or some other form of identification. Because my understanding was somebody said that people have to physically come in to present a document.
So possibly actually make contact with, do you want to, she needs a microphone here. Do we have shortage of microphones? We have 2. I can talk. I can talk louder. Yeah. Okay.
So you're saying require the contact information. Okay. Maintain actual. Okay.
Right, so I was going to follow up to verification. So whether you look at their driver's license, copy the student ID, get some, really looking at something that is considered a form of identification and somehow making a record of that.
So verify contact information. That's a good idea.
Okay, can everybody read what I'm writing? Is it big enough or should I? Okay.
For flyers? I wrote it that way because I don't know how to spell flyers.
Yeah, 2 choices, I or Y.
Or
Y.
Okay, or Y, both work?
Sorry. So one of my takeaways from last time is that there didn't really seem to be a platform for marginalized groups or individuals to really feel like they had a place to be heard. So during the forum, I felt like there was a lot of people really just trying to have their voice heard. And even when the president and administration are up there saying, hey, we'd like to, these are the things that we'd like to do to solve a problem, there was just a lot of people that really just wanted to be heard. So I don't know what has been done or not been done since then, but I feel like that is something that could be expanded upon.
Yeah, and then correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's another thing that BERT seems to be handling within the policies that you've created for that team.
Yeah, but I want to make sure I'm clear on what you're asking. Essentially, you're saying something we can do as an institution. Yeah, thank you. Something we could do as an institution programmatically is establishing platforms for people to share and that they can share their thoughts and their feelings and just creating that. Is that what I'm gathering? Perfect. So that's a program that we need to implement, opportunities for the community to just share and just their frustration, their anxiety, whatever it is, and we just listen. That's what we're talking about. Perfect.
So this is for Dr. Stinnett. Have the representatives for BERT been appointed? How will they be appointed? And how can we make sure that there's a diversity of people on this team?
messaging is appropriate and sensitive to the group that is being targeted.
How would you say that a different way?
I don't know, like, is there a system in place now that there will be contact between those putting out university messages in response to things and the actual groups that are targeted to make sure that we're not offending anyone when talking about groups, and that, you know, we're being sensitive to the group that's being targeted when talking about them on a large scale?
I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah, and that's a good question. So essentially, if we had consulted possibly someone from the LGBTQ plus community before we sent out the haphazard message that we sent out last semester, maybe they would have been able to assist us with the language and saying that might not strike the right chord. I think that's what you're getting. Yeah, and so the whole point of BERT is to do that, right? Is to ensure that we have the right people around the table and that we are sensitive to whoever's been impacted by that before we launch something. Okay, that's okay, that's fine, yeah. Any other programmatic ideas, suggestions, collaborations?
One of the things that I thought is important is, you know, I'm a former military officer, and I've run across people that I know, they just wanted to kill someone. And there are some nasty people out there, and we'd like to think that there's nasty people out there, and we'd like to think that they won't come onto campus, and we can do what we can to keep them from coming on campus, but the fact is, at some point, they will. This isn't going to go away just because we want to make it go away. And so it seems to me one of the points of important things is to help ourselves learn how to deal with things, which is what we're doing now, but to help, you know, there's psychological responses, there's tactics that are ways that people can respond that are helpful. And it seems to me one of the big points of one of the things we need to do is we need to offer either some kind of forum, some kind of presentations about how do we respond when we have how do people respond psychologically, emotionally, with words. What kind of words can be used when these incidents come up, so that the responses to it are maybe even turn it into opportunities for you know, increasing inclusion and increasing levels of acceptance from people. That was one of the things I heard the chairman of our board of trustees do so well, and I thought it was just dead on accurate. Is when this happened, his point was we need to turn this into an opportunity. This sad situation into an opportunity to get Cleveland State to help develop ourselves to the point at which we become a nationally recognized place where people go who have the unfortune of having had people marginalize them or you know, act against them, and it takes proactive. Here's how we're going to do it kind of thing.
Whether or not it's there. I'm looking at page 9, and I guess what I'm curious about is, although there are reporting parameters in place, I don't see follow-up with actual concrete steps of how we would continue to ensure a victim is not falling through the cracks. Say, for example, making sure they're getting counseling, checking back in a trauma-informed manner to ensure that even though we've offered once, knowing that trauma is sometimes a trickle effect and may take a longer period of time, that we'd have to go again. So I think I'm asking to see if there can be something that is systemically put in place by Cleveland State to ensure that we follow back up again with victims and their affiliated groups, so that we're doing our due diligence around the care they actually need.
So if I may respond to that, that's a fantastic point, and you actually used the right word. We have something called a care team that has been in place for almost the whole time I've been here. And the specific intent of that group, and it's very similar to the same departments that Dr. Snett mentioned, right? So it's counseling, it's police, it's student affairs, it's all of these offices who are intended to provide support, comprehensive support for students or groups. And the real fascinating thing, so if something happened and I was an individual that was targeted, that support would be offered to me. So someone from the care team would reach out to me saying, we just want you to know that counseling is available to you, there are other resources available to you. If it impacts a group, that's where it really intersects between care and the PERT team, right? And making sure that intentionality is in place to reach back out to those groups. Sometimes we know the groups, sometimes we don't know the groups, right? Sometimes individuals or groups are impacted that are less obvious. And so it's a community opportunity to engage in those conversations and help us identify them, and then we'll trigger the appropriate support networks. Fantastic point.
So, and just to add to what Boyd was saying, so OIE, one of the things we do is when we learn that somebody is impacted by discrimination or harassment, OIE reaches out to that person and offers them all kinds of resources and academic and other types of accommodations if necessary. And OIE has quite a few students or members of our community who we regularly meet with to remind them of the support that's out there and to offer different types of support at different times. So that is something that we do, and that goes on. We'll do it. Sometimes we'll refer to the care team, and the care team will refer back to us. But there is some things in place for that follow-up that you're talking about.
Is there are those processes outlined somewhere that the general community would be able to see? Like, we know a victim would be touched maybe 3 times, reached out to so many times in a systemic way. Is that okay?
I think that's a great.
I didn't hear your question, I'm sorry. And it's being recorded. If you mind saying it again, let's make it so that it's clear.
I just asked if those policies were outlined anywhere where the general university would be able to see to know that a victim would be retouched, outreach would be performed again so many times, like after 30 days, after a week, just something that is, everyone understands that you will be contacted again.
So there are 2 parts to that. The first part is what the care team would do or OIE would do, and I think those are fairly well articulated on our web pages. There's another part that you didn't say directly, but I'm going to go ahead and address, and that is we don't require anyone to do certain things, right? So we don't require someone to go to our counseling center. We don't require someone to go to OIE. We offer those opportunities. We offer those support mechanisms. But there's nothing in place that says if you don't do this within 10 days, we're going to reach back out to you to make sure you do it. So I just want to be clear about that part of it. But what we do offer is outlined on our website. And if you have suggestions as the conversation unfolds about other ways we can make that more evident, more transparent, I think that's a good part of the conversation.
I think I'll add to that. And what my takeaway from what you're saying, great point. I think something we can do is think about ways when we have these forums and talk about this to the general public is to highlight and raise what the supports are and to talk about the processes and systems in place on an ongoing basis. So that's something programmatically we could do as an institution when we hold these public forums or community engagement types of activities to really express and to illustrate and to show where the supports are at, the systems are at, and what they look like. And I think that's programmatically something we can do. So that's fantastic, okay?
I was just wondering, as far as like the flyers and signage and everything around campus goes, do you have like a set policy? I know as far as like speech goes or, written words goes, it's like held on a case-to-case basis from what I gathered. But is there like a specific outline of like photos and things? Because I know that a lot of what people had an issue with that flyer was the fact that there was someone being hung on it. So I was just wondering if you had a policy stating potentially triggering images such as like gore or violence or anything that could just be campus-wide saying like, don't put these things on a poster?
So the restrictions that we have are not content-based. But in terms of certainly flyers, the bulletin board restrictions, because it has to be related to a department or an event, presumably would not have those types of images. But we can't actually specifically regulate. The First Amendment doesn't allow us to say this type of picture is okay, that type of picture is not okay.
I know that this was discussed at other forums and discussions, but I would like to know what the status of considering added sensitivity training and expanding that sensitivity training beyond the LGBT community. I'd like to know how that's going, who's in charge of it, how will it be advertised to staff, what any possible requirements.
That's perfect, exactly. And that's a suggestion, and we are moving in that direction, and that's what we're looking for with this. We had heard that previously before this meeting, but that's exactly right. We're implementing that. At our last meeting, there was even conversation about training for faculty and staff and diversity of faculty and staff, ongoing training. And my office is positioning itself, just full disclosure, I've hired 2 new individuals in my office to work as an associate vice president for institutional diversity and a director of a diversity institute that will focus solely on what you're talking about. I think I saw your hand too, Maris. That will focus solely on what you're talking about in training and developing an ongoing training, not one and done. Okay, this is ongoing work that we have to commit to, but that's a fantastic recommendation as far as programmatically something we can do, and we will keep you abreast on how that's looking. All right, I see you back there, so I'm going to go over here first.
Keeping in mind that recently colleges and universities across the country have become the target of agitators, let's put it that way, I think this may relate more to the bigger picture that's coming up down the pike, but I can see strong connections between the work we're discussing here, we're planning for here, and the larger Cleveland community. So I know it all takes time and resources, but it would be helpful for the city of Cleveland or the metro area to look at CSU as a center for such conversations that will have gone on for a while, but because we don't live in a bubble. And if students who represent marginalized groups feel safe here, hopefully, but they don't feel safe when they go home, or the other way around, then there is a disconnect that'll tear down what we're trying to accomplish here. So maybe tapping into the resources and the structures that Cleveland has to offer, letting them know that we exist and this is what we're trying to do, and maybe bring them to the table.
Mine was just a really quick recommendation. So you mentioned the department boards across campus, and I guess one of the things, if it doesn't already exist, is perhaps a point of contact in the departments that lives with conference services, so that if you're trying to get on a department board for whatever reason, you still have a one place to go, centralized place. So.
One other piece I just noticed as I was looking through this, and I'm not a student, not on campus here. I'm with Equality Ohio, the statewide LGBTQ education advocacy organization, and we look at these policies a lot within cities. But just as I was looking through this, I didn't see, I see lots of information about reporting. I don't see anything about a remedy or what happens when someone violates this policy. And so I would just encourage you, the closest that I see is section F1 that just talks kind of about the Office for Institutional Equity would respond and take appropriate remedial measures, but I just wonder if that's something that's worth spelling out to say, if you commit these things on campus, if you communicate this is a remedy. This is how we would actually respond for not just the person who maybe has been violated or who is the victim, but the person who has committed that.
The different types of possible responses are set out in really great detail. Everything from sanctions that might be necessary to protect the campus, such as removing someone from the campus, to different types of restorative justice or other types of remedies to benefit maybe the person who didn't follow the policies and help them increase understanding, to things that would assist the victim. So that stuff is spelled out in the policies towards the end. Procedures, yeah.
Just following up on the comment about, including our larger community, do our inclusion policies and protections cover only students, or do we also include our larger community, our neighbors, people who share our space? An example might be someone who's homeless, who is in our library because it's below zero outside. Are they welcome? How do we make them feel included or welcome? They may be someone who would like to become a future student. Do we have, any safeguards to protect them? Do we have any way to help them to feel welcome? Do we offer any services? Do we have a way for them to sign in on our computers if they're looking for a job or looking to apply to school? Thank you.
I think we do have protections for the community at large, but I think the takeaway I'm getting from you is putting something in place, a program or some type of mechanism, something in place to capture that and to create a pathway for these individuals within the community, right? And so we're most definitely open to exploring that. But just the general response is, yes, it extends beyond the students, okay? I think that is the general response, all right? Very good, yes.
You mentioned that you were looking at faculty and staff, but I wanted to know, was there going to be some kind of comprehensive training for students as well that is mandatory?
Yeah, it's a great question as well. We actually started the conversation by, is it possible to make this type of training mandatory for all students? That's a heavy lift, so I think it could go in the realm of suggestions. What we're starting with is the groups that we have most frequent interaction with, like student government, campus activities board, the Greek community, those types of groups. And then we'll take the lessons we learned from that and try to expand that to all students. But that is an aspirational goal.
Thank you, Boyd. And so let me add to that. We have discussed the possibility of infusing it. This was brought up in the first community forum about creating a first-year course, expanding that so that all students that go through their first-year course that's mandatory, that we incorporate this type of work. And we decided even in that conversation that it wouldn't be sufficient to be a blip within that system that's already established, because one of the students said it's very helpful how it's already established, but she said she would like, in addition to that, maybe another course offering that speaks directly to what we're talking about now, diversity, inclusion, and making that a part of the curriculum for first-year students that we do catch all. And so that is most definitely on our radar, and I think that should be a suggestion that we even add here, infusing this work into the first year so that most students can have access to it and understand the significance of this. So yes, okay? No, I don't think so. So, again, we're working out the details. I don't know at this point. Yeah. I think if we make it a part of the gen eds, it's just a part of the process. But I mean, these are all good questions that will tease all that out.
We do have an Intro to University Life course called ASC 101, and right now, I think as student government, we've been revisiting exactly how we are reaching out to our first-year students. Maybe that's like a peer-to-peer relationship or something of the sort. But I think the moment that students step on campus, that should be a message that reaches them, whether that's orientation or a class. And ASC 101 is actually a pass or fail class, so I think that's also a good message. If you got the message, you passed it. Severin Beer.
We have a question here.
Okay, let them go in the order that they have, okay, and then we'll get back to you. So please, yeah.
Well, I guess my question is, maybe not really a question, I just want to know if there is like some training in place for like the staff to handle, like maybe you have like a student who is acting up in class, and is there like some, program in place for like the staff to be able to handle it?
Suggestion, and we need to make sure, I don't want to tell you definitively yes, but that is something we need to make sure about. We need to inquire and possibly implement. And when you say acting out, Michael, when you say acting out, what do you mean?
There are just certain students that are like, they like chaos, like they will create chaos because that's what they just want to see what's going to happen. People just incite things like that. So I know like the staff is not always prepared for stuff, something like that. and no one is ever prepared for something like that. So I'm just like, is there something that can be done about that? That's what I'm
Absolutely.
asking.
That's a great suggestion. What type of training have we put in place for
Right.
staff and faculty when students or individuals, period, are creating a hostile environment?
Correct, yeah.
How do they respond to that?
Right.
And we need to make sure they're properly trained to do so. That's a great suggestion. Because you're right, students can come in and using the freedom of speech, start saying things, creating an environment. Have we trained the leaders of that room to be able to adequately respond to that? That's a great suggestion. Yes.
Good afternoon. I want to go back to the things that are set in place for certain incidents that might happen on campus. I am a first-year student of Cleveland State, and last semester I was taking 4 classes and I got an extra course, and it was for sexual violence. And since I'm a work study student and I work in the business management department, I was asking a professor, did I have to do this? Because it wasn't a part of my curriculum. I didn't pay for the course. Well, and they said, yeah. So I took it. I noticed Miss Rachel on there, and it was just a course on sexual violence, and it went through a lot of things of what to look out for, what you should do, who you should contact. If they have other things that are given to first-year students, first semester students along that, because we're already on the computers while we're here all day anyway. You don't have to make it a requirement, but it should be something set up to where you know that each student has done this, read this, passed this, and understands this.
That's a great suggestion. Let's add that one. So essentially, it's an automated, it's set up in a way to where you click on it and you can, just like a course. Okay. Okay. So
It's a Blackboard shop, the Blackboard course that.
Yeah, we've got that now, don't we? I mean, that,
Yes, Title IX.
yeah, it's a Title IX course, so everybody does have to take that now. And at least from my perspective on the faculty, you know, the issues with it are about giving academic credit for it. But I think we can work it out. All over the country, people have such courses, and it's just kind of a requirement, right? Not much to say past that.
Just to speak to the gentleman's response about chaos in the classroom, I would suggest that you add conflict management as part of your diversity repertoire.
Perfect. Conflict management. Yes, thank you.
First of all, I want to say that I think this sensitivity training for student government would be a great idea. I would also like to add, how will we ensure that such information in this sensitivity training course is accurate? For example, if you take a sensitivity training class and there's something inaccurate, then it really defeats the purpose of the sensitivity training. So who's writing these courses, who's going to be writing the curriculum, who's going to be handling them, teaching them? Will faculty or students maybe of these marginalized groups be able to look these over and say, yes, this is accurate, this isn't, or possibly even speak to classes taking sensitivity training? What do you think?
That's a perfect, I'm going to reframe what you're saying and pose it as what we need to do. You're suggesting is that, number one, we create these sensitivity trainings. Number two, ensure that we are aligned with those leaders in the field that are assisting us in developing them and having student voice, faculty voice, community voice around those issues. That's what you're proposing, and I agree with you, okay? Makes absolute sense. And so that's a program. So when we create it, number one, but to ensure we have the right people around the table to give us what is the most accurate information and up-to-date best practices around whatever we're doing, and then also incorporating student and community voice in that. That's a fantastic suggestion, yes.
I had 2 small suggestions. My first one is, so at Kent State, we had like a core that we had to take, and I took conflict management, which I feel like was a really, really good Kent core to take. You could take conflict management or political science or a couple other ones. So I think that conflict management is a really good way to give someone credit and to have them take a course that's really, important for social interaction, especially at the age that most college students are. And my second point was, I don't know if, so I know that for a lot of transfer students, they are exempt from a lot of courses. Like I entered Kent State as a junior from Tri-C, so I was exempt from a lot of courses that I had to take freshman and sophomore year. So kind of making sure that even transfer students are become in contact with these mandatory courses or have the opportunity to take the courses that are not mandatory, just as a way to ensure that you're not missing any students that didn't come freshman or sophomore year, and kind of have those same opportunities to learn about these things and to have the opportunity to be exposed to the same information that underclassmen are or non-traditional or traditional students are.
It's a fantastic suggestion. Yes, great.
Including transfer students, exactly for the reason you said, because some of this information is really important. So at least there's we do try to do that.
Yeah.
I like I like the idea about the conflict resolution course. There is such a course here in the College of Education. I happen to have developed it a few years ago. I haven't taught it, but one thing that your point made me think of. In CMSD, the Metropolitan School District, there is a peer-to-peer mediation program that's used to be called WAVE, Winning Against Violent Environments. And if high schoolers can engage in peer-to-peer mediation, I'm sure college students would benefit from those principles. So that may be a practice that we want to invest in. WAVE, yes. Winning against violent environments. Winning. Environments. WAVE. Think of an ocean wave.
Any others?
Yeah, I recognize that just recently they opened an LGBT center on campus, and some other groups have their own centers. Would space be available to any vulnerable or oppressed group that feels they need a safe space to gather?
Great suggestion, because when we start to do that, we need to make sure we're equitable, right? Equity for everybody and equal access and opportunity for these spaces. And so that's something we need to carefully consider. Thank you.
I wanted to go back to the Blackboard Title IX course. I'm also a new student here, and last semester I saw this course, and it made me nervous, not because I didn't want to take it, but because it kind of came on a little at the last minute. Do you have a policy put in place to give students more advance notice so that they can take more time to make sure they complete the course?
And so you're right, it took a little bit for us to get it out this semester. It's actually going out this week. So our goal is to get it out earlier than last semester, but that's just what it took for the first time. But this semester, we're already on track to get it out by the end of this week. So it's a good suggestion, and you weren't the only one with that thought.
And I was just going to say, with some sort of introduction outside of it just popping up on the Blackboard page, maybe just something that goes out with the expectations outside of it just being there.
So we do send it. We send both an email and to people who get the course, and there's a message within Blackboard about what it is and what the expectation is.
One issue that has been noted across the country in terms of any type of training has to do with the fact that it only scratches the surface. So unless we take on the challenge of inserting, and I noticed that Bill made a note on the previous sheet, inserting topics that we discuss here in the curriculum so that students and faculty and staff have opportunities to delve deeper into what it means to do this or not to do this or to ignore that practice. may only continue the deficit that we're faced with. So again, there's a gap between how we think we would work as a democratic society and how we actually work or not. So I think trying to find ways to entice faculty to tap into their expertise, bring people around the table, and create coursework that would speak to how we want to be. We eventually have to come together as a society in whenever that'll happen, but we have to find a path to get there.
Finding strategies, a program would be, and did you say it's already up here, or do we need to add? Okay.
One thing that's useful, one thing that could be useful along those lines is the board has asked, I know the faculty and I believe the students and the staff to come up with priorities. And there's a group, and I don't know where that student group is, but
Here, I'm a part of that
Oh,
group.
yeah, okay. So you could talk about that, and that would be that would be something that when our new president comes on board. I mean,
Safety is definitely one of our priorities. So I will definitely come back to that group and make sure that we hit that point home.
This was fantastic, and I think what we're going to do now is I think you'll take these and put them around the room. Is that how this works? And then they're able to identify. So I'll let you explain it. So thank you all for participating in this, and they will explain how we're going to wrap this up.
Right, so I think what the plan was for this, unfortunately that moderator is not here that came up with that, but we're going to take these down, we're going to put them around the room, and then you go around the room, put down some stickers next to the ones that you think are the top priority for Cleveland State, and top three priorities, and we'll make sure that we really hit home on those ones and we revisit those ones the soonest.
That's right. So they're going to pass around stickers now. Select your top three, put a little sticker beside it. We'll see what's clustered the most, take that as a group and focus. We're going to get to everything, but we're just prioritizing how we're going to tackle these issues. Again, thank you for your time. Oh, all right. Yep, just one moment.
Sorry, just one last comment. I'm actually here from the Diversity Management Program in Psychology, and we have a master's degree. So if you're interested in a degree in that area, talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
Excellent. No, that's great. And so, again, as they're preparing this, I'll just give you some kind of wrap up. So what we'll do is we're going to take what you identify as the priorities as groups. We'll reconvene. We'll have another community session. And then our team will get back together to assess these, to outline them. We're going to highlight a strategy to possibly implement what you've suggested. Then we're going to communicate back with the broader community where we're at, and this is going to culminate to this anti-hate concert that we're having. And hopefully at that point in April, student government representative and student leaders and community leaders will be able to speak to where we're at and what we're going to focus on first and how we're going to move forward. So next steps will be we'll gather all this information from the community groups. After that, we will assess the priorities, we will outline them, we will post that on our website letting you know what we've assessed and what you said. And then we'll have the celebration, but at that time in April, at the anti-hate concert, we're hoping to announce what we're going to move forward with and what that's going to look like, okay? So that's how this is going to follow up. Thank you for your time and your attention, everybody. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget to mark 3 of them, all right? Thank you.